What do these things have in common? Calming down a panicked scuba diver 20 feet under the ocean, treating an overdose at a Taylor Swift concert, and figuring out why our primary application cluster is suddenly dropping traffic. Well, all of these are incidents that I've managed as a dive master, a volunteer EMT, and an SRE. I love incident management. I love solving problems under stress, and I don't get enough of it at work, so I do more of it in my free time. But more importantly, all those scenarios are instances where you need absolute confidence in the knowledge you have. When you're stepping up to solve an issue, you need to know what you know need to know it's true, and you need to be able to apply that to the problem that's at hand. And so today we're going to talk about how we know things, how we stay confident in our knowledge, and how we apply that to incidents. And that is epistemology. So epistemology is the study of knowledge. How do we know things? How did we learn them? How do we know that they're true? And when the adrenaline is going, when a page goes off, when the chips are down and stakes are high, vibes aren't enough. You can't throw instinct at a problem because human instinct is panic. What you need are consistent models. You need references of thinking. You need scripts for communication that are going to make you more effective and keep the people around you effective. And when I give this talk, I often get a bimodal distribution of feedback. There are people who find new concepts in what I'm talking about, which is awesome. If you're in that camp, I'm thrilled. But I also tend to have people give feedback that, well, yeah, you're describing how I solve a problem. And if you fall into that camp, I would encourage you to find ways to bring this information back to your teammates, to your juniors, to your new on-calls or your new incident managers, because problem solving is hard to teach. A lot of us gained it by walking into walls enough times that we finally found the door. So be keeping that in mind. If this is familiar content to you, how can you bring this back to others? And a lot of my examples in this talk are going to come from my perspective as a cloud application SRE. But this applies universally to a lot of different job titles, and I actually give a really similar briefing to this to my new EMTs when we're talking about debugging the human body. So even if you're not in a direct tech handling role, I think a lot of these concepts will transfer. This is one incident loop. An incident loop gives us a reference to understand where we are at as we solve a problem. This is from the Site Reliability Engineering Handbook from Google. You may know the OODA loop. Military tends to use that one. But today we're going to walk through this loop of decision making and how we can orient ourselves in it and what each stage demands from us. So even before an incident begins, we need to talk about detection and declaration. This is pretty hard to generalize because everybody has different stories around what they're doing. But ultimately, in my experience, this comes down to two things: codification and teamwork. So codification, we got to write things down. It's not enough to set a culture or say you have a culture. You need to have written guidelines that you hold yourself to and you hold your team to, so that when that pressure's on, it's not going off of, oh, well, so-and-so said we do this. So one of the things we got to codify is around alert fatigue. Do you have metrics that tell you when you need to review your alerts? It's all well and good to look at your giant pile of alerts. Do you have policies in place that go, okay, after this certain number of alerts that did not drive a direct action, we need to do a systemic review. Can you make that regular? Do you have lines of communications from your on-calls, from your incident managers, to be able to say, this is not relevant, this is not valid, this woke me up at 4 in the morning and I went right back to sleep? Codification around the style of your alerts. Anomaly alerts tell us when something is abnormal, and problem alerts confirm when there's a problem. What blend of those are you setting out? You can make all kinds of anomaly alerts. You can say when lots of things are weird, God bless the moving weighted average. But unless you actually have proof that something's failing and have guidelines around what is appropriate to actually dispatch alerts for, you're just going to start spraying alerts out because they're easy to make and it looks really good on your OKRs, and then none of them are actually terribly useful for telling you, hey, this is down. and we need action. Appropriateness for receivers. I laughed when the keynote had the exact same image that I did. When you are codifying your culture, do you have written guidelines around what teams are receiving what type of alerts? What's appropriate? As an SRE, I care when our queuing systems are 2 standard deviations off normal. John Q application developer or our marketing engineers have no use for that information. So keeping in mind what's appropriate and actionable, again, so you're not just spraying out those alerts and going, look at our alerting OKR. None of these are appropriate for the people that have visibility on them. Codifying your severity matrices and escalation criteria. So many times I'm working with an organization where either this doesn't exist or it technically exists, because 5 years ago for some compliance box ticking exercise, you had to make one. Nobody wants to declare an incident on vibes. That sucks. It's 4 in the morning. You just got up out of bed, and all of a sudden you need to kind of poll your feelings, and hopefully you have enough knowledge to judge the severity of an incident. Absolutely not. You need to make SLOs, write down your SLOs, and have the people that are responding to your incidents have visibility on those to empower them to declare not just incidents at the right severity, but to know when not to declare incidents and when to let things lie. And then after codification comes collaboration. In any emergency scenario, you are only as good as the people you have supporting you. So craft a culture that emphasizes collaboration. Emphasize, don't be afraid to page your secondary. Emphasize, don't be afraid to ask people to come and join you in the war room. Clarify, don't come out of the gate storming with an incident that blindsides everyone. Whoa, who declared a SEV? What is happening right now? Acting solo is an enormous amount of pressure. So you need to build that culture of support to guide people in their decisions so they don't feel alone, because when you work as a team, you can decide as a team. So, we're stepping into an actual incident now. We're talking about the first steps we take as an incident is coming off the ground, and it's really tempting to want to jump in and solve the problem. Feels great, but you don't do that. There's something we have to do first, and that's keep the boat afloat. In aviation, you have 3 priorities at all times, but especially during an incident. Aviate, navigate, communicate. In that order. Your first job is to fly the plane. In medicine, we have the ABCs: airway, breathing, circulation. Does not matter what else is going on. If those are not squared away, your patient will die. So what we need to do is buy time. This can look like rollbacks. This can look like scale-ups, opening circuit breakers if you have them, access denial, especially around security incidents, load shifting if you can, failover. Buying that time in reversible ways so that then you can work the problem without continuing to degrade the situation. It's terrible watching a ticking clock go down of things are about to get way worse, so you better get all your thinking done in 3 minutes. Buy the time. Keep the plane flying. We've bought time. We can stop and think. And we're going to move into phase 2, which is examination. We are gathering data. We're looking for evidence. We're trying to arrange our information in the ideal in such a way that a conclusion jumps off the page at us. We know what's wrong simply by virtue of the volume and quality of information we've collected. That basically never happens. But it's a great goal, and we can never get close to it unless we arrange our data well. So how do we set ourselves up in an incident for effective examination? We're going to think in systems and chunks. When we're doing our exam, we're going to make logical bubbles in our system, not just thinking at the individual host level or the individual network level, but thinking we've got network and edge, we've got compute and load, storage, we've got upstreams and downstreams, and we're going to move through those in logical blocks. And even prior in the preparation phase, we're going to be auditing, do we have the right alerts for those blocks? And this requires really intimate knowledge of your system. So do you have architecture diagrams available for people? Do you have architecture diagrams that somebody can read and actually form an accurate picture of your system so they can reason. Hint, if you have 64 nodes on an architecture diagram, it's not going to be conducive to someone forming a picture in their head that actually lets them systemically understand where are the boxes, where should I draw dotted lines around this. Look at your observability and error reporting. This is a given, and it's critical. Look at it, for sure. Look at your application logs, your Sentry and your Bugsnag. Look at your application logs, your Splunk, your Datadog, your network logs, ELB, VPC Flow, Looking Glass, infrastructure health, CloudWatch, Stackdriver, or CloudOps, or whatever Google calls it now. But more than that, think in hierarchies and think in inconsistencies. All observability systems are a lens from one angle at one portion of your system. And it's really tempting when we look at two different observability lenses and find inconsistency, or we find conflicting information, to drop it and try and go and find another piece of information that is consistent, because we crave pattern matching, we crave consistency, and it's really tempting to just step away from that. But it's trying to tell you something. If you deeply understand your visibility systems and deeply understand what angles they're looking at and what those lenses mean, you can find meaning in that inconsistency. So I've got a load balancer that says I'm seeing elevated 500 error rates, but my application logging in Sentry is not showing me any errors. We have an inconsistency. Errors, no errors. Why don't we just go look somewhere else? That'd be a lot more comfortable. But maybe I can derive from that, okay, so our load balancer might be hitting our application cluster, and the application cluster starts spinning, and then the load balancer times out, and then my application cluster finishes spinning and spits a 200 at a closed socket. Or maybe the application cluster is actually timing out, but they're so loaded that it can't actually get that error frame off the system and get it up to my centralized ingest point. So those inconsistencies are they're trying to give you that information, so don't walk away from them. Don't hide from them, embrace them, and know your logging and error reporting systems well enough to mine that inconsistency for data. You can turn those holes, that weirdness, into information. Keep great personal notes. I am a massive fan of lab notebook style notes. So these are not just things that I want to remember. This is a block by block log of how I spent my day. This is what meetings was I in, what commands did I run, what was I working on that day. Keeping great notes is critical, especially during an incident. I thought when I was younger, I'm going to be a senior, and then I will remember everything. And it's the opposite. My brain sucks now. So you got to use those notes as a second brain. Use those notes to offload what you're thinking, what your preliminary conclusions are, and that's going to help you move more quickly and arrange your thoughts. This is a note-taking technique that I use in incidents. This is my standard template. If I go bang sev in my notes, this template pops out. We've got evidence. This is why I suspect there's a problem. This is the direct cause of why I'm declaring an incident. This is what alerts did I get. This is what's failing. Why do we think something is wrong? Correlated and causal. This is usually once I'm into the investigation phase. What is pointing at a root cause here? What is probably part of this problem? What other alerts am I seeing? What other instability am I seeing? Building out that causal tree. And then nominal. What do we got on the spacecraft that's good? Apollo 13, fantastic movie about problem solving in a high stress situation. What have we ruled out? What's currently normal that either we may care about later or we're not going to care about? And when someone joins the war room in half an hour or an hour to see, yes, you did look at that and you confirmed that's not something that is affected by this issue. And then odd but uncorrelated. I used to not have this category. And then there were so many incidents where I made it explicit. There's always noise. There's always noise. Any running system will have something about it that if you look closely enough, you go, that's weird. And a lot of times that has nothing to do with the actual problem at hand. But you make a category for it. Sometimes unusual things that don't seem correlated will become related later, and then you're really glad you have the notes. But again, it's saving that investigation time. There have been incidents I've been in where someone goes, oh, hey, did you guys see the database cluster is spinning really hot? We're like, yeah, we looked at it. Like, oh no, I think we should really look at it. It's like, no, we looked at it. It's fine. It's weird, but it's fine. You can short circuit that whole conversation if you've got the information that someone needs to see that for themselves. I love keeping links in these notes. Lots and lots of links. Links to your dashboards, links to your logs. Leave the breadcrumb trail. Let someone pick up the pieces as you went and follow and walk the same path you did. Sometimes you'll save time and they'll come to basically the same conclusion you did. And sometimes they won't. And frankly, that's even way more interesting when someone goes, I looked at the same thing you did and I have different ideas. So here's a hypothetical, well, it's not really hypothetical. This is from a real incident that I worked a couple months back. So under evidence, we've got an edge origin in Asia Pacific. We're timing out at greater than 10%. Here's a link to the alarm that fired. And we have an independent 500 alarm on the edge that's firing. There are the links. Correlated and causal. Our synthetics are failing intermittently. Great. We have a semi-local repro. Our load balancer logs are reflecting these errors that are going out. Fantastic. And we had a deploy half an hour ago. Very, very relevant. We'll talk about time correlation in just a bit. What's nominal? Our network edge volume looks normal. Here's the dashboard I learned that in. Our Splunk, our application error reporting looks clean. Here's a link to that view. Our application logging is clean. Sentry is clean. Our application error reporting is clean, and here's the service I looked at. And then odd but uncorrelated. As I said, this is a real incident. Our dead letter queue, way above normal. Completely unrelated to the problem we were having. Our database usage, also way above normal. We don't actually know why that alarm didn't fire. Completely unrelated. So it's with those real world incidents, you find so much weird stuff when you start poking around and looking deeply. We've gathered our data. We've investigated, and it's time to start figuring out what's going wrong. In the diagnosis and hypothesis phase, our goal is to form a testable, consistent hypothesis that we can then test in the next stage in stage 4. And this step will loop back on itself. If we come up with a theory and then test the theory, there's a good chance that theory is going to be wrong. So we come back to this. This is the core of our loop. We come back and try again, make a new hypothesis. So how do we hypothesize or diagnose well? We're aware of our search patterns. When you're choosing to examine a system, stop and think about the nature of the examination that you're doing. Linear search is a really simple example. We're going to follow a request all the way from source to sink or from sink to source. I could give a whole talk on why I love and hate tracing, but tracing is a great game changer for this. If you can throw one trace ID in and yank out the entire life cycle of that request, that's going to make linear search a very accessible, easy way to dig in. Or are you thinking in bisect? We're looking for inconsistencies here. We're going to choose a cut point. We're going to go, does the problem happen above or below that cut point? Is it ahead of us or behind us in the network stack, in the storage stack? Take that cut point, oh, it happens ahead of us. Pick another cut point. Start comparing those 2 points. Oh, we got the problem there, let's pick another cut point and compare there. Basic binary search. But stopping and thinking about what methodology you're using is going to stop you from starting to kind of hint at a binary search, and you're kind of going to pick a spot in the middle, and then that wasn't it. Well, we'll try and like follow it forward, but we don't have great tracing. Stop and think to yourself, what pattern am I using to search here? Are we trying to induce changes? This is kind of a little bit more of a test, but can we make a limited, reversible, ideally quick, alteration to the environment that will tell us more and help us form a better theory? Can we throw a pebble in that pond and watch what the ripples say we should be thinking about what is wrong? We're going to think in proximity and correlation. So we have proximity in time. When did it start? Did anything else start with this? Did we do a scheduled job kickoff at this time? Does this synchronize with the Eastern Seaboard coming online or Europe waking up? Correlation in space. Well, not literal physical space, but the metaphorical space around your systems. Are there upstream or downstream dependencies that are affected? Are there surrounding services that we can correlate this problem with? Thinking around the problem teaches us the shape of the problem and how we should direct our theorizing about it. And then correlation in action, which is pretty similar to correlation in time, but is dependent upon us. Did we just deploy? Have we pushed out route changes lately? Do we have scaling up or down that we've just made the decision to do? So thinking about the shape of the problem, what's surrounding it and near it in that conceptual space is going to help us make better theories. Don't stop early. It's a great quote by Emmanuel Lasker. When you find a good move, look for a better one. Stopping your search early is really, really dangerous. There may very well be much better ideas out there waiting for you. And this is something I see in a lot of war rooms. Because there is one idea, there is therefore one thing to do, which is not a great place to be in, because that might be a really bad idea. But if you don't have alternatives, you don't really have an option to do anything else. So don't stop early. Keep looking. This is a great time to bring up the people that are supporting you. Can you hand off this theory, this lead that you found? Can you hand that off to someone and say, hey, can you go chase that down? Because I'm going to keep looking. Or be like, all right, I found an issue. This is where I'm at. Notes dump. Can you pick up the search where I left off? I'm going to start drilling into this and see if this is the problem. So when we're trying to form our hypothesis, let's dig into the epistemology here. What makes a good hypothesis? It's two things. It's got to be testable. You have to be able to test your hypothesis. If you have an idea about what's going wrong that you can't prove or disprove, it's basically useless. We need to be able to take an action to see what the veracity in our theory is. And a hypothesis has to be relevant and specific. It needs to be based on available information. We need to reason really tightly around why this is what we think is going wrong. The theory of something is up at the network level, that's okay, but way tighter is edge proxy is dropping traffic in APAC. Way tighter, way better statement of what the problem is, way more specific, which is going to make your testing a lot easier. So we've come up with a hypothesis. We have a theory. And now it's coming time to figure out, is it right? Hypothesis is a testable theory. Now we get to the test. So what makes a good test? It's got to work on a hypothesis. This is essentially a restatement of don't just go flipping knobs and flipping switches and turning knobs because you have to be doing something. When you are making changes in your systems, they need to be testing a theory about what's wrong or testing a theory about what the fix is. Go in with a clear picture of what knowledge you are going to gain from doing a test. And making this mental distinction, I have calmed myself down with it, where I'm going, oh, okay, well, we're gonna fail over. What are we trying to accomplish here? Why do we think failing over is gonna fix it? And maybe it will. And that's fine, but we need to stop and think ahead of time about why this is the action we're taking. And sometimes just stopping and thinking about that is going to help me realize that a test is poor, or that it's a fine test, but I'm actually not getting any useful information out of it. Test has to favor the likely over the unlikely, and the fast over the slow. This is that classic quote, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. We're looking for the most likely option. And the immediate value of a test is basically going to be these two values multiplied together. If we have a test that is probably not what's going on, but it's real quick just to rule it out, that can be fine. If we have a really slow test, we're going to burn a lot of time on this, but we are pretty certain that that is what's going on, that's all right as well. But stopping and thinking about what's the duration we're going to spend on this and what's going to be the expected value return is going to make a big difference in prioritizing what our options are, which we hopefully have multiple of because you didn't stop early. A test needs to be mutually exclusive. This is similar to the concept of differential diagnosis in medicine. A positive test and a negative test need to prove or disprove a theory. Having one of those but not the other, if it's like, well, if this succeeds, we're going to prove it, and if it doesn't succeed, I don't really know what that tells us. It's certainly not that we were wrong, but not that we were right either. Your next steps are going to be really muddy if you land on that unlucky case. So stop and think about, what does this going well and what does this not going well do for my theory about what the problem is? A test needs to be free of compounding factors. We don't want to introduce dependencies into our problem solving. And I see this a lot around internal tool use. You go, okay, well maybe production is down. I'm going to use this script I wrote, and we're going to hit the production endpoint, and we're going to see if it's up or not. Well, if it's up, great. If it's not up, that doesn't mean the production endpoint's down. If you get an error back, maybe your VPN's misconfigured. Maybe you wrote your script wrong. Maybe that endpoint is not reachable from your network segment. So stopping and thinking about, when you design a test, what am I introducing here as dependencies that need to also not break in order for me to get truthful information that reflects reality out of this test? And then tests need to be free from side effects as much as possible. This is pretty self-explanatory. Verbose logging, great. Not if it fills up your disk and blows out your log ingest quota. Try not to choose one-way doors unless you're certain that you need to do so. Again, this is a case where I see that only idea in the room syndrome. When there's one idea, it can feel really tempting to reach for the one lifeline that you see in that room, even though you go, wow, if this goes badly, we're going to completely hose traffic for like the next 6 hours. So stopping and thinking about, is what you're doing reversible, and what are the side effects going to be? A test needs to have clear outcomes or markers of success. Don't move the goalposts. This is my mantra at work. People are sick of me saying it. Don't move the goalposts. When you are designing a test, determine what a positive outcome and a negative outcome looks like ahead of time, and then don't change it. We go, oh, well, we have a 100% error rate from this particular host. This is going to fix it. This is my hypothesis. Making this change, we're going to fix the problem. You make the change, your error rate drops by 70%. You go, well, I was 70% right. Now the incident is 70% resolved. No, you were wrong. Your hypothesis was wrong. Now don't hear that I'm not saying you didn't gather valuable information. That is incredibly valuable information, and you are 7/10 closer to solving the problem. But the key to remember is that your hypothesis that said this is going to fix everything was incorrect. So what that tells us is, let's go back and gather more data. Let's pull all the data we can out of the test we just did and go get more. Let's start hypothesizing again. So being intellectually rigorous with your conclusions as you do those tests is going to help you not, I don't want to say delude, but not sort of morph into this, well, it's mostly okay. It's pretty fixed. No, our idea was incorrect. We thought it would fix everything and it didn't. So be honest with yourself and don't move the goalposts. Track your results. You're going to pick up a theme. I love notes. Keep great notes. All your results, even your negative ones, even your, well, that didn't fix it. I guess that was the wrong idea. That's still valuable. Those are going to inform future hypotheses. It's going to guide your teammates through what just happened. And even if new hypotheses are only vaguely related, there's never going to be a problem with having more information about the shape of an issue, as long as that information's accurate. So communicate in the open. Use state documents. Put things in a live war room if you have a textual war room. Keep your own time-stamped notes. We'll talk a bit about timestamps in just a moment. Because without records, it's a nightmare to bring others up to speed. And your post-mortem is horrendous. When you don't know what happened or what failed or what you tried at what time, putting together that evidentiary chain, understanding the cause and effect, understanding what went wrong in the reasoning process that we didn't understand fully, gets so hard. Speaking as someone who's done a lot of root cause analyses, please keep good timestamp notes. And then be proactive. I call it time traveling. While you are waiting for your tests, don't twiddle your thumbs. Don't just sit there. Imagine 5 minutes in the future, your test has succeeded. What would you do? Imagine 5 minutes in the future and your test has failed. What would you do? Who would you bring in the war room? what would you start working on next? What would you look into? What would you delegate out to people? And as long as it's not at cross purposes with what you are currently trying to do it now. Get ahead of time. I have had instances where I am waiting for the outcome of a test to come through, and I have written a public comms document if this works, and a public comms document if this doesn't. And that's the difference between getting the test result back and going, oh, okay, hold on, what does this mean? What do we do with this? Nope. We have thought about these outcomes ahead of time. I have used that downtime, and we are ready. If it goes well, we do this. If it goes poorly, we do this. So be proactive, stop and think. Catch your breath, but stop and think ahead when you have those beats. So we kind of sped through this loop. So let's recap. Even before we get to an incident, we need to codify our practices, write them down. Be intentional about your culture, yes, but write them down and hold your team to them. Foster that culture of collaboration. Make it okay to ask questions. If you are more senior or you hold a position of power, with your voice, it is your job to ask dumb questions, because they're not dumb questions to everybody. It is your job to bring that culture consistently into the open, of clarifying when you don't understand something, of working together, and of asking for help. We don't like rock stars. Please, no more rock stars. As we move into triage, we're going to keep the boat afloat. Focus on that survival. Buy yourself time in reversible ways so that you can stop and think about the incident without the pressure of what's about to happen crushing down on you. As we examine, we're trying to gather evidence. We're going to think in systems and chunks and know our systems well enough to reason well about where the silos are, where the boundaries are in the design of our system, and what our observability systems tell us with their inconsistencies. And we're going to keep really good notes. I'm just going to keep saying it. Please keep good notes. As we move to theorize, we're trying to come up with ideas. Choose good search patterns. Stop and think about the path you are walking through your systems before you walk it, and see if there's a better path you could walk. You're going to think in terms of proximity, space, time, and action. What's the shape of this problem? And don't stop early. Keep coming up with those hypotheses that are testable and relevant and specific as much as you can. And then testing, good tests. We got to work on a hypothesis. Just doing something does not count as gathering data. We're going to favor the fast over the slow and the likely over the unlikely. Your tests need to mean two different things if they succeed or they fail. We're going to try and keep them free of those compounding factors and free of side effects, and never move the goalposts on what we say our theory is and what the test results mean. And then track your results. Keep notes. So as the clock winds down, we're going to talk through 3 bonus incident communication skills that can level you and your teammates up while you're working through an incident. You may be picking up on a trend here. Keep good notes. Annotate your weights in time-stamped form. If you have downtime, put it in Slack. Slack's great. Slack will timestamp it for you. There have been times where I've come behind a team and begun on a higher level root cause analysis. And I have a Slack log at 11:49 that says, joining the war room. And then I have a Slack log at 12:50, an hour later, that says, looks like we're seeing recovery. What did you do? An idea was had, executed, the fix was performed in a video chat that I was not part of. And putting together that root cause analysis got way harder because I go to someone and I say, hey, what did you do for the fix? And he's like, I don't think we failed over. I don't remember, which is reasonable. It's a random video call incident at 2 in the morning on a Sunday. Keep good notes. Those giant gaps suck, not just in root cause analysis, but the first thing that any senior stakeholder asks about an incident, why didn't we recover faster? Maybe the zeroth is, why did it happen at all? But why couldn't we come back from this faster? Where did you spend your time? What brought lag into your system? What parts of this recovery process were really slow? You can't do systemic improvement to make things faster unless you know where you're spending your time. Make plans with momentum. Lots of people have beautiful ideas and incidents. They have great ideas, but they get kneecapped by the way that they phrase them, because it's like talking to a brick wall. If your decision needs input, clarify what input it needs. direct those questions or decisions to a human, not to the room, not to a team, to a human, and phrase the request in a way that drives forward a default of action. Bad. Should we roll back? I don't know. Should we? Who are you asking? Who are you talking to? Much better. John, are there blockers from your team on a rollback? Is there anything critical in the last release that was a one-way door? I need your answer in about 5 minutes, and at that point, as long as you say no, we're going to do a rollback. I think we should scale up. Cool. Nice thought. Thanks for sharing. Doesn't drive that action. I want to scale up our background worker job from 50 to 100 workers. Elise, does your squad have any issue with that? If I don't hear anything, I'm going to scale up in 5 minutes. Default to that action. Phrase those directly to humans and not the room, and drive forward the action. Keep that momentum in the way that you voice ideas and encourage others to do the same. And finally, ask questions in ways that drive answers, not silence. I need people's input in an incident. I need to know what they know. I want to hear their thoughts. But if I ask questions in a way that pressures someone to not speak up, I'm robbing myself of the opportunity to hear what they have to say. I'm robbing the problem of being solved faster. So 2 examples. Phrase open-ended questions in a way that indicates that there are answers and that you want to hear them. We say, hey, scaling up should be fine, right? Pressure's a yep or silence. That's not really driving an answer. If we say, hey gang, what are the downsides of scaling up? We're lining up 1, there is an answer to this question, and I am directing you to please give it to me. And it doesn't pressure an easy, yep, we're probably fine. It's asking, what are the problems? I need you to go and find them for me, and you are satisfying the spirit of my request if you do find them, rather than, well, I would speak up, but it's kind of interrupting him, and he's more senior. And then second, many calls for questions in and of themselves are phrased in an ego-down way. We've all been in a situation where we haven't spoken up, I'm sure, because we were afraid of looking a little dumb. So when we say, are there any questions? 1, the default answer is no. And second, speaking up requires the self-confidence to go, yeah, I didn't understand something, and I'm going to say I didn't understand something, and that's hard. That confidence comes after a long time, and for some people it never comes. But how tragic to ask a question that doesn't get answered because you phrased it in a way that required confidence that someone wasn't quite there on yet. So if I say any questions, that's kind of implying an answer of no. Any questions? Nope. I understood everything, definitely. But if we say, what parts of this can I clarify? Again, we're setting up that expectation of there are parts of this I can clarify, and you're making me happy if you tell me what those are, and subtly, you're smart if you can spot those. By shifting that tone, we turn that call for questions from an ego down to an ego up. And very few people do this intentionally with questions, but just those simple tweaks in phrasing can be the difference between getting really valuable information that we need and people staying silent. Incidents are all about knowledge. They are fundamentally a game of asymmetric knowledge. There is a truth that exists that describes why something is going wrong, why things are broken. And as incident responders, as people training incident responders, it is our job to drag that truth into the light of day and balance those scales so we understand what's going wrong and how to fix it. So I hope you found at least one methodology, either for yourself during incident management or to bring back to your teams, to ask questions better, to level up. Hello? There we go. To level up that next generation, for those juniors, for those new incident commanders, bring that back to your team. And I'm going to adjust the famous quote, those who can, do, and teach. Thank you very much. And I will add, if you enjoyed this talk, all of my slides are permissively licensed. And so if you're like, hey, I just kind of want to bring this back to my team, bring up those incident commanders, feel free to lift a wholesale. Oh, or not.
Great talk, Jack. Does anybody have any questions? If so, please provide your name and attribution. Sorry, mic one.
Hi there, Justin Shuck, E+ Technology. So how do you eliminate the human error in this, which is most people won't take the systematic adoption. They want to shotgun the solution. So how do you get people to adopt this without standing there next to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody does want an easy button. Everybody wants to just move straight through it. I think there are a couple solutions to that, and one of them is sort of akin to a blameless culture. The moment that we make incident management less about who did something wrong or what broke, framing it in these really negative terms, and can move it into this is how we systemically improve things. This problem is something that we can make blossom into a lovely outcome. Yes, recovery, but long-term improvement, process improvement. I don't want to say something as cliched as get people jazzed on incident management, but I think there's so much negativity and shame around if an incident is human-driven. There is so much drudgery in incident management. Sometimes it's unglamorous. We get out of bed, 2 in the morning, it sucks. That's life. But if we can view this within the bigger system of this is how we make our systems a better place, more reliable, more robust, shift that original mindset that you're operating from. I found that helpful, and again, I haven't gotten many people jazzed about incident management, but understanding the bigger framework that they're a part of, understanding that this is a good use of time, that we have to solve this problem, but we're gonna make something great out of this. So that's something that's worked for me and my teams.
Really quick, Les, do we have any remote questions? Okay, thank you. Darren?
Yeah, Darren Carrick, Quad 9. I can't love this presentation enough. I'm working on one that's very similar to this. It's a template for incident response for some value of incident. I love that you use incident and not outage. Everybody has an outage report that's loaded. An incident can be maintenance, can be DR, it could be an outage. And proper recording, I have incident channels where, like you say, you put it in Slack and you know exactly what you did, what command it was, and what the output was. So yeah, I really appreciate this. Look and you will find. What will you find, Darren? Yes. But I would love to collaborate with you, or at least talk with you about this. Like I said, I found myself unexpectedly paid to leave my job in 2024, and I had a lot of energy around this and started creating my presentation. And then, I got another job, and it took away from my time. But I'd love to talk to you some more. Thank you.
Absolutely, I'd love to connect afterwards. Thank you.
One last quick question from Adair.
Adair Thaxton, Internet 2. I'm the one who recruited this talk. I saw you talking about it on Reddit. I thought that was a super cool topic. I also have been impressed over the length of my career about how important it is to have people who troubleshoot with different styles. At one of my past jobs, we had the librarian who would always start looking through her email for other issues that particular customer had had. My boss at the time liked to start with one particular management platform over the other when looking for outages, and I always went to the syslog. And we all kind of supported each other and came to the right conclusion because we all attacked it from different angles. And I really have appreciated the way that you've put this together, and thank you for presenting it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, those alternate approaches, that's why I phrase things so agnostically. And I hope it wasn't too nebulous at times, but everyone does have those beautiful different approaches. So let's think in terms of what gets us the truth, what gets us the resolution, not, well, begin at this log and here's your run book you use. That diversity is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jack.